If you watched my last video on this 2011 328i Xdrive BMW, you know that it has bad rod bearings, and I will be changing the engine. So today I was able to purchase an engine from a local salvage yard. It's coming out of a 2013 328i Xdrive, and it's an N51, which is what this is. So it's the ultra emissions one, but it's got to be the same engine. You can do an N52, but that means flashing the computer to run the N52 instead of the N51. I don't want to mess around with that stuff on this if I don't have to, and luckily I don't have to. So that the engine I'm getting has 113,000 miles on it. This one's got just about 115,000 miles on it, so matches the car perfectly. Comes with a six month warranty guarantee. There'll be no issues with the engine at all, and I got that for $1,350, so $1,350. I thought that was a good deal, especially seeing how what I have into the car. Like I said before, I only paid $2,200 for this car, and it's in nice shape. It's worth putting an engine in. And so all said and done, I should be right around $4,000 into the car completely. Without any other foreseen issues coming up, but we'll see. So now I'm about to start pulling this engine. It's going to be a day or two before I have the one I got from the junkyard today. It's still in the car. They're going to pull it out for me. They're about an hour away from me. And so hopefully tomorrow night, or maybe the day after, I'll be able to go pick that up. But I'm not in a big rush because I still have to take this engine out. And I've never pulled an engine on a BMW. Before this car, I never worked on BMWs. But it's an engine. I can pull it out, I'm sure. Let me just get the camera turned around so I can show you a bit more about what's going on here. I spent quite a bit of time on YouTube trying to see other people that have done this, see how they did it. It's always a good idea if you can see or read about how it's done. It saves yourself a lot of time on trying to figure things out. I haven't really found a really good comprehensive video on this, so I kind of feel like I should make one now, but I don't really want to do that. It's a lot of work to record everything, but I'll walk you through what I did as I did it and try to make sure that I cover everything, just because I want to make sure that you get all the information that you need to be able to do this job. If you come across this video, I want to make sure that you know what to do. So in the last video, I had pulled the valve cover, and I did that because I was hopeful the noise was in the top end. The way the piston rod is gone, I'm pretty sure that the piston, at least one of them, maybe more, is actually hitting the head, and makes it sound like it's a top end noise, but it's not. It's bottom end. I'm almost sure of it, which is really weird for a low mileage N21, but that's the case. So that's already apart. I'm not going to bother putting that stuff back together because some of that stuff already had to come apart anyways. So we're not going to worry about that. I'm going to start with the front end. First thing I'm going to do is drain the fluids and start taking the whole nose off. So you can take the whole bumper off in one piece with the headlights still in it, from what I've been seeing on other videos. And you can take the transmission cooler, radiator, and air conditioner condenser all out in one unit. So that's where I'm going to start, and then we'll, from there, start taking off other stuff. The intake manifold needs to come off. I think it needs to come off only so you can access other things, like the starter has to come out. I'm going to try leaving the transmission in the car, and so all the bell housing bolts have to come out, torque converter bolts, a couple engine mounts. I don't think it's going to be as bad as it seems. But let me get started with taking off the front end, and we'll go from there. Anything I encounter that I think you need to know or is interesting, I will definitely take a time to show you that and go through that real quick. So let's get started. I've been out here for 2 nights after work. It's really not that late right now. It's about 8 o'clock, but I think I'm probably going to call it a night. You can see there's a lot to take apart here, a whole lot. You got the whole, basically, nose off the car. It's all sitting out here in pieces. Take the intake manifold off. I already had the valve cover off, so there were some things I already took off. There's lots and lots of wiring on this. So this is an N91. I think I might have mentioned that before, but the N91 is a like super low emissions car. And so there's a lot more stuff going on to try to keep the emissions way down. And that makes it way less fun for me. So this is probably, honestly, probably one of the most intensive engine swaps I've ever done so far. There's a lot to this. But I think all that's left right now is the bell housing bolts, the torque converter bolts, which I haven't gone under the car yet to see what that's like, and the motor mounts. I think that's pretty much it. There's probably a couple little things here and there. You gotta take off this, I think it's a power steering cooler, but that's mostly disconnected already. I had to disconnect the AC, disconnected a line here for the AC. I'm going to try to pull it all out with the compressor still there. See if that works. I'm not sure, but that's the goal. There's nothing really so far that stands out to like tell somebody as a tip. It's just a lot of stuff. Like you got to just look it over, and as stuff is in your way, you got to remove it. The wiring is the worst part. I did find that it was easier to unbolt this bracket than it was to try to slide it off these little things. I couldn't pull it off, and so I ended up just unbolting it. It was easier for me. Something I have noticed already is it's probably hard to see. Let's see if I can get down in here. Do you see this hanging down here? That's a broken oil pan bolt. It's just been sitting there. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then so I saw that, so I started looking around, and I noticed that, you're not going to be able to see it, but in the front corner here, there's actually a missing bolt. So that one had already broke and fell off. There's sporadic aluminum bolts on this. So earlier I had mentioned that it was weird that the alternator bolts looked new. I'm guessing those are probably aluminum. The starter bolts are aluminum. And a lot of these, you need to replace them. They're not supposed to be used again. I'm not so sure. We'll see what happens there, but it's really weird picking up a big bolt and it not weighing anything at all. It's the oddest thing. I've never worked with aluminum bolts before. And up until now, I've never worked on a BMW. So, way to jump into it. I'll get the video rolling again when I either start yanking the engine out or after it's out, but stay tuned. I intend for this video to be all the way from pulling the engine out, putting the new one in, and having the car all done and together. So let's see how it goes. Stay with me. I'm ready to yank this thing out of here. It's quite a bit to it. It's not too bad, but there's just so many wires and things. I have to remember where they went. Fair amount of wires here hanging off. Should be fun. Had to pull the axle. This axle actually goes through the oil pan and into the differential. It's down here. There's also 4 bolts in the differential that I had to pull out. And I pulled out this axle as well. I'm not sure I had to pull this one, but I did just because it's easy enough to do. Online, I found directions for pulling the axle. Even though I've done a lot of this stuff on different cars, for the first time on a car, I always look to see what's out there, because it's so much better to find out, you know, if there's an easier way than what you would have done. In this case, it was the opposite. The directions said, remove the caliper bracket, remove the rotor and all this stuff. And that was totally not necessary. It was a matter of this ball joint here, the tie rod end, and the sway bar link. That was it. And then popped right out. So no problem there. I disconnected the exhaust at the collectors down in there. You can't see it. The worst part of the whole job was a bolt for the belt housing that's like behind this head. And there's not a ton of room, but there's enough room. The problem I had was that it didn't want to break free. Every bolt I took off of this car, like, I didn't have to like double wrench or anything, most of them. And just really easy. But that one bolt, the hardest one to get to, was the hardest one to break free. Finally got that out. And I unbolted the motor mounts just at the top. Torque converter bolts are all out. There's a hole. I don't know if you can easily see. You can't really see it. But there's a hole in the engine block, kind of opposite of the starter, across the block, that you can access those torque converter bolts pretty easily. So those are out. Most of the engine's stripped down. I left on the AC compressor. I'm going to pop that off after the engine's out. And this coolant manifold also, I'm going to pop that off after the engine's out. Exhaust manifold has to come off after the engine's out. And here's my new engine. So I picked this up at a local scrapyard, 113,000 miles. Supposedly runs great. Looks pretty good from what I can tell. And this was $1,350. And so all I have to do to transfer over my exhaust manifold, I got new gaskets for that. This is the intake, sorry. Over here is the exhaust manifold. I got new gaskets for that. I got new gaskets for the intake. And just transfer it all over and drop the engine in. I'll drop the engine in. I'll put the exhaust manifold's going to go on. The AC compressor's going to go on. That plastic coolant manifold or whatever that is going to go on. Then I can drop it in. And after it's in, then I'll start reassembling everything. All the wires, all the hoses, everything else. And then get the nose on. But for now, I'm going to yank the engine. Let's get this going. All right, I figured this would be a good spot to do a little update. I got the new engine in the car. Exhaust is on. Torque converter bolts are all in. Bell housing bolts are all in. Motor mounts all bolted in. Differential is all bolted in. I got this axle all back together. Still got to do the driver's side, but it's coming along. Let's see, what was difficult really was only the differential, putting the engine back in. I tried leaving the differential and drive shaft in the car, but I just could not get the engine to go by the differential. And I tried using some mechanics wire, just tying it back, and it was a nightmare. So I ended up disconnecting the drive shaft from the differential, dropping the differential out, putting the engine back in, getting some bell housing bolts in it, and jacking the engine up a little bit just to get enough room to get that differential in there. That seemed to work out pretty good. And so I'm going to continue from here, but I think, I shouldn't say this, but I think from here it's going to go pretty smooth, because I think the hard stuff is done. This is just easy stuff. The hard part is memory. Like, I have to remember where all the harness goes. And a lot of it isn't hard because, these can only plug into one spot. But the hard thing is remembering when to route wires a certain way, because There's certain items that if you put on the car before you run the wires, you can't run the wires correctly after that. Or certain items on the intake that have to be plugged in and stuff before the intake goes on, or you won't be able to reach in there and get it. So just little stuff like that. But yeah, it's coming along. Stand by. Hopefully the next update will be this thing starting up. Well, it looks like a car again. I'm pretty exhausted. It's been a long day. It's about midnight right now. It's all back together. I have some coolant in there. I'm not sure what to do about this system to burp it correctly, but I just want to hear it actually start. Still have a little bit more plastic to put up here, wheel wells, but for the most part, everything's together. Fresh power steering fluid, new oil change, like I said, fresh coolant, and I'm ready to see if it's going to start, and you guys are going to witness what's going to happen when I try to start this. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. A little nervous. That's a lie. I'm very nervous. Have no idea if this is going to work out. It's probably going to leak stuff. I mean, that's kind of typical. Hopefully there are no leaks, but we'll see. All right, I'm kind of scared to hit this button. Let's see. It's running. Nothing pissing out of it, but it does not sound happy. That's to be expected. There's all kinds of spray on that exhaust manifold. Doesn't sound very happy. I gotta open these doors. It sounds like it's getting worse. Like it's trying to die. RPM's okay. It's kind of surging, running a little bit rough. It's complaining because there's no front tires on the car. I don't know why it's running quite like this. Yeah, it's just complaining about the no front tires on it. I'll make sure there's no injectors leaking or anything like that. It looks good for the most part. I'm not sure what this goes to. I think it goes to something with the clip up here, but if I'm wrong, that could be why it's running kind of rough. It's definitely running kind of weird. I can hear a whistle too, like there's a major vacuum leak. Yeah, it's getting worse as it idles. It just kind of it's dying down. Oil pressure light. hope that means I have something unplugged. 'Cause... Okay. It doesn't want to run anymore. And I'm not going to try to restart it. Interesting. There's no puddles under here. That's a really good sign. But yeah, it didn't seem happy. Not really sure why. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I can look at. Like I said, it's midnight. Just got the engine all put back together, got the nose all back together. It started, first try. Granted, it wasn't quite right, but it did start. And I'll have to figure out the bugs in the morning. See you then. After some very long nights of working on this, it's done. Last night was rough. I was so exhausted by the time I got done. It ended up just being a cam sensor was loose, the connector to it. I didn't plug it all the way in. I was able to scan it this morning. It said there was something wrong with that sensor. I was like, oh, lucky. So now it's purring away beautifully. Let me show you how it's doing. So much better. Sounds really good. I haven't taken it for a ride yet. Just got it out of the garage. But yeah, everything's back together. It looks no factory. Everything went together good. It looks like I gotta find the plug that goes there. I'm sure I've got that kicking around somewhere. But that's it. So basically got this car now, if you don't count any of my labor, which I don't, about $4,000. I think that's a pretty good deal. So I'm going to drive it for a while. It's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for the title to come in. And then I'll decide whether or not I want to keep it or do I want to sell it and move on. If you like videos like this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. Thanks for watching.